The NWSL offseason, it hasn't even been a month yet, and already rules are changing. Things are moving all around. They have created a new roster mechanism to allow teams to pay players beyond the salary cap. They're calling it the high impact player rule, or the HIP rule. So, bit of an explainer for you here. The long and short of it, this rule, the HIP rule, would allow teams to spend up to $1 million over the salary cap on top end players, with only a portion of that salary contributing to the salary cap. But the biggest question comes out of this: what defines a high impact player? And frankly, it is a bit unclear. There's no official definition that has been provided by the NWSL yet. Multiple reports say that it includes both sporting and commercial benchmarks. Sporting benchmarks meaning rankings on lists like Ballon d'Or, appearances on the NWSL Best 11, or U.S. Women's National Team minutes earned, perhaps even A3 weekly Best 11 honors in that one there. Also, commercial benchmarks, meaning the marketability of a player. This is news. This comes after dealings and negotiations with Trinity Rodman and the fight for Washington Spirit to keep her at the club and in the NWSL, Darian. When you look at this rule and the benchmarks that players need to meet, does it feel more player-based, the talent of someone and what they bring on the pitch, or more marketing based, what the name and the aura of that player brings to a league or a club?
It's sounding like whatever player's a little more hip, if you get what I'm saying. I think it's based on I think it's based more so, obviously you're not going to get those marketing, the Ballon d'Or, making the lists, whatever they may be, unless you are a player of great value on the pitch and you're putting up results and leading a team. I still think it makes sense from where that money comes from your marketability, that it can go to the player in whatever way is how they're moving about it. I'm really interested. I feel like NWSL always does a really good job of giving you like a little snippet that gives you enough to talk about it, but what are actually the benchmarks and rules? Yeah, how much can they give? It's up to $1 million over the salary cap. But I know that there's flexibilities in there for what the dollar amount actually means. And say a player has an injury,
or it's vague enough to just make it confusing enough, but also gives you enough details so people
know that they'll talk about it. And here we are. But also, when I'm concerned with what does this mean for when a player has, say, a major injury? We're having an epidemic with ACLs, maternity leave, as that's more plausible now. What does that affect players and where they sit and how much money they can earn when just being a professional athlete, these things happen? It's all very confusing. It's very NWSL, even high impact players, very NWSL, very American. It's hilarious. But I do see this rule probably changing a little bit, because there are players that are incredibly impactful for teams that maybe aren't on these massive lists, like the unsung heroes of teams, like a Sam Coffey, or who, I don't know, the unsung heroes of teams.
National team minutes. I think Sam Coffey would qualify.
Sam Coffey would probably qualify. Maybe a Lola Bonta, like players that are faces of the league in ways, but aren't making these massive lists, but pay these girls. So I'm confused by it naturally, because we're meant to be confused by it. But I don't know how you guys feel about it. If you're into this or not, Jen. I don't know. I'm curious from your European perspective.
I think, first of all, I think it's a positive that they're trying to develop the structure and lean into being more player-led and giving players what they deserve, right? That's, if a player has a certain market value, they deserve that market value. It's there for a reason, full stop. I think, so in my opinion, I think it's a real positive sign that they're open to change and quickly. I completely agree. I think what you just said, Darian, about you think it'll be changed again, because I agree with that. I think it's really hard to keep up with the growth of the game and how fast it is changing and developing. I think a lot of people in those positions would say the same. If you are the decision makers, you can make a plan for the next six months, 1 year, and the game will outgrow that very, very quickly. And I think the financial structure is the exact same. the way it's been phrased, high impact player, if you're in a team and then you're then thinking, right, am I not making a big enough impact? Are you then questioning yourself? I know the jokes would be absolutely flying if I was still in with everyone within in a locker room, in a changing room with a group of people who are trying to figure out who's in a high impact, and there would just be a lot of conversation around that. I would hope in a jokey way, but I know that it could affect some players negatively. So I struggled a little bit with the wording, and I'm also, I don't know if this is lack of knowledge, but how many players are allowed to be in high impact player?
Those are some of those vague details that they
Yeah.
haven't given us. And
Right.
frankly, I don't think they will give that information to us. But you're exactly right, Jen. There are a lot of elements of this that feel like a Band-Aid over a bullet hole that is an issue that is only going to continue to grow and get better, because this allows us a little bit of a bridge in the NWSL to compete with the investment and the no salary cap of clubs in Europe. And that's where this stemmed from, the Trinity Rodman conversation and going to Chelsea and Alyssa Thompson, Naomi Gurmer, whoever's going there. But that competition and that vast separation between what they can pay in Europe and what they can pay in the NWSL is only going to grow. So this $1 million, I don't think it's enough.
No.
Also another thing I would love to say though is I think it just feels like this is reactive off the back of
Feels like a Band-Aid.
Contracts that are happening right now. And yes, it'll solve short term. But I say this, you have to think, and also, I would just love if it was made fair for everyone, and everyone, like, it's not this might be really beneficial for a handful of players, and yes, that is, marquee signings, but to really grow and push the game, lift everyone up. I think everyone deserves to earn what they deserve, and throughout a league, throughout the NWSL. So, yeah, I think it doesn't benefit everyone, is what I'm trying to say.
I think it's a Band-Aid over a much larger issue within the NWSL of the poor salaries for the players. I mean, the base salary is still very low. The cap salary is still very low for how many more games you play, how many more tournaments you participate in, how much more competitive the league is, all the TV deals, the media, everything that's now surrounding these players and the marketability of this league and these players that I think the league profits off of the most. It doesn't make a lot of sense that, Jen, you said it, just a handful of players get only $1 million, even though they probably deserve more. And on top of that, someone in the comments, just Funky Old Medina, made a good suggestion. Would Jess Fishlock be a HIP? Think about the players that this league was built on that maybe are retired from national team or aren't making those big lists, but they have for years, 10 plus years. It's really not fair. This feels like a Band-Aid fixing an immediate issue when it is so much more grandiose.
And also the NWSL trying to catch up with what the rest of the world is paying players, or
they're already doing,
instead of being a leader and in the forefront of, we are going to change all of these rules to make it so that we can be the best in the league. And one of my biggest issues with this is the marketability of this, because a player's marketability is completely subjective based on how much the team wants to promote them, how much the club wants to promote them, right? Like, you can have superstar players that maybe don't want to be the face of the media.
You
but
could have a terrible agent that doesn't help you out with that stuff.
You could also have great players that have great personalities. They're huge on TikTok. They're doing all this social stuff, but they're not getting a lot of minutes. They're more to me, it's just, they're not comparable. Those two elements to base a HIP player on is subjective, and it doesn't matter. And what happens if you, like Darian, you're talking about the injuries to a player that could happen midseason. Okay, but what if they just fall out of form? What if they do something maybe untasteful in the media that now they're no longer marketable, right? And there's a scandal. Like, there's a million things that could happen. How does that change their salary midseason or affect the team? There's so many elements of this that seem so confusing. To me, it's a lot of different avenues of it, but who are some of these players? This rule is based around Trinity Rodman. Who else would you guys throw in there that could be considered right now in the NWSL a HIP player that this rule would apply for?
Oh my goodness. Who's a high? Let's go around the teams.
I would say
Gotham.
Rose Lavelle at
Yeah.
Gotham.
Esther Gonzalez.
But
With
Midge, but then you could argue Midge Purse is also probably the most marketable player on Gotham, if that's what we're going off of.
And, like-
Incredible player on the pitch, but she doesn't get all of the global accolades that the other two that you guys just mentioned are.
And how do
Fanta.
internationals come into this play? You just mentioned Esther, but what about Temwa Shawinga?
What
what's
about
happening?
Barbara Banda?
Are internationals not
I
allowed?
don't know.
They should
Sure.
be allowed. I don't see why they
Yeah.
wouldn't be allowed.
But also
100%.
some of these internationals are on national teams that aren't making the rankings and a lot of the awards or whatever it may be, or aren't able to shine and actually get into the top 10, whatever it may be, of some award. Because
Yeah, but if we're going back to high impact, it doesn't get much higher impact than Temwa Chawinga,
absolutely.
the Barbara Band
No
band.
matter where the
No.
bar is for high
Yeah,
impact,
we're
she
talking
hit
about the definition
Yeah.
of who can impact. Chawinga, for sure.
Temwa
100%. But it,
Amazing. Is
yeah, like on our list we have here in our rundown is Sophia Wilson, Mal Swanson, of course. But it's
But what about a
again,
player
it's
like
so
that's
like
who
we're in the clouds.
That's who I think about. And who's making those decisions, right? Is it the NWSL board? Is it players voting on it? Is it like who's making these decisions as to who is a HIP player?
well, also when I was sorry, I'm leaning in on a table now, so I feel like I'm getting into this conversation even more. But also, was it not just going to open like so many doors now for players to call at their teams and be like, okay, can I be the high impact player? Who do you think the high impact? I just can't even imagine the agents now and the GMs and everyone negotiating the contracts in a break that this has come into play and how that's like just put an absolute.
And how do you make that fair for everybody?
Exactly, it's not though. It's not.
How on earth do you
Would
make
you
that fair and parry out the money in a way that makes sense
Right.
for a team? There's 11 players on the pitch and 28 that you train with. You don't win championships. You don't win a game on a weekend without every single person.
Mm-hmm.
So how much Jen touched on that, Darian, a little bit. Like, could this create roster divide within teams and within environments of knowing, right? I would imagine that the HIP players, once they are determined, will be public knowledge. You know who's a HIP player, and I'm not competing in that situation. How could this change locker room and team roster dynamic?
I think I want to say a locker room is a little bit more pragmatic than that. But when you're a player that's on, say, $25K a year, and maybe there's injuries, and you're playing 90 minutes, you play most of the games out of the season, something happens, and somebody else is making $1 million plus that's maybe sitting out, but they're the most marketable person on the team. That's a tough pill to swallow. You would want to make a move and go somewhere where maybe you're going to be valued higher. So I actually think it's going to be more so how that money parries out to the rest of the team. How the full impact of the 11 that are on the pitch, whatever weekend, whatever it's on training or it's in a game, how are you actually being valued monetarily? I think that's going to be more so what players truly look at and try to make moves on their career for that, because many other players are getting paid. You should too. Maybe you play more minutes than the high impact player does.
So could this change the dynamic for maybe smaller clubs that don't have big superstar names? Like, who could benefit from this club wise on that level? If you think of it from that perspective, Darian.
Like, you want me to name a club?
Well, like, does it come down to, okay, they don't have stars on their roster already, or location, right? I think location and geography is a big factor in USL right now, marketability, but also whose owners have a lot of money to do this.
So you're saying someone like Gotham or LA are more marketable because they're in the sort of big cities?
I would argue that, yes.
Like Louisville would love to have a HIP player. God, I hate saying that. It's so bad.
I can see
so
that.
bad. It feels better than like high impact player, because I'm like, everybody can be a high impact player. Like
you're right.
Yeah. But I think a team like Louisville is craving a HIP player.
Yeah.
Or maybe a Houston is craving another one to be alongside, like a Yasmin Ryan or something like that.
Mm.
And they'll make moves in order to make that happen. But I'm wondering, how does that affect the foundation of the roster, the players that play in the 11v11 match day -3 to help the team get a win on the weekend? You know, those things, those fundamental things that go into playing on the weekend are going to change when you don't have players on your full roster that feel valued. And
Mhm.
monetarily, they need to be reflected with that.
Absolutely. This is a Band-Aid. This is a really quick fix for an immediate problem that the NWSL had, which is Trinity Rodman. And they were, to me, it looked like the league was looking at this one individual issue, not the grand scope of it. Because frankly, this news came out. We just tried to define it, talk about it for a couple minutes here on A3. We came out with more questions than we did answers. Who defines it? How many per roster? How do internationals affect it? There are just more questions than we have answers at this time. We'll keep you guys updated. Anything that happens. Right now, the salary cap in the NWSL is $3.5 million. That will continue to grow over the next couple of years with shares and based on the current CBA. We'll let you know as everything's happening. Follow along on social. W Galazzo, because they'll keep you updated as everything is happening.